Kat, I wanted to say I very much appreciated the video you put up months and months ago about Northern Yearly Meeting being on Zoom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
It was very helpful when we needed to make our transition.
Welcome, everyone. Let's take a moment. I assume that more people may join us in the next couple of minutes. So let's just settle into a little open worship, and we'll begin shortly. And we are recording. May words of the Spirit be spoken and words of the Spirit be heard. So, hello and welcome. My name is Steve Mohlke. I'm a member of Ithaca Monthly Meeting in upstate New York, and I also serve as General Secretary for New York Yearly Meeting. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about clerking and thinking about being online, and have led some little workshops on clerking online, and am just delighted to have the opportunity to be with you all to talk about that right now. So we've got, the format is that I'm gonna present for a few minutes. Like, the guideline is 5 to 7 minutes. I haven't timed myself on this, but I think I can hit that. And then to open this up for discussion. So I'm gonna just start with, I'm gonna share my screen, and I think I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. I'm introducing this as much as anything to say this is something I would often do. As we saw this morning, it's helpful to have visuals. I'm just reminding, this is reminders for people who are not familiar with Zoom. You know, you can use the unmute button. I've got a graphic here for unmute. To find the Zoom chat, it's down here on your window. And then for this size group, I don't need to use the digital raising of hands, but we may use it anyway. So for most people, you would find a reactions, and raise hand is one of your reactions. And that's when I say digital raising of hands, would you raise your digital hand? That's what I mean. So we're here for about 45 minutes. I think we got started a little early, maybe have a little longer than that. We're aiming to end at, when are we aiming to end? 1:45, this is 2:45. I think we're starting, Anybody have a clear, let me confirm now. Does anybody have a clear
Yes.
memory? Yes, thank you.
Yes, you ended the quarter till the hour, so we have a 15-minute transition.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, we're ending at yes, quarter till the hour. So first thing, I want to set some common guidelines here. And I want to say too, everything doesn't have to be perfect, but my goal is when I'm clerking anywhere, but clerking online also, we want people and spirit to be able to show up and participate. That's the goal. And if I fumble around too much, it's a distraction. People get distracted. You get taken out of that sense of spirit. But nor do we have to get it perfect. People will forgive all kinds of things. It's and where that line is, I can't tell you exactly, but that's what I keep in mind is, can I get this smooth enough that people and spirit can show up? And so one question I would ask in clerking online, how are you going to handle Zoom chat? I promise you that if you don't create some expectations as a clerk, participants will make up their own rules. I have been in Zoom spaces where there is as much conversation going on in the chat as there is in the main window. I do not find that helpful in a meeting for business. I think of that as a side conversation, and we try to avoid those. And so the guideline that we've worked out in New York Yearly Meeting is the chat is open to host only. So chat is good for some things, like sharing specifics, like email, or links to relevant documents. Like those are very difficult to do verbally, but they can be done. And Zoom is not so good, or chat is not so good, because it becomes this venue for side conversations. Phone participants cannot participate in chat, so it's at best a supplement. And so and as I said, if you don't define it, people will. And so host only for me works. You could shut it off completely, or there's I was part of one gathering where we decided we were going to leave it wide open so that participants could chat with each other. This was more of a workshop format, but just don't do it publicly. Don't do the chat to everyone. The important thing here was we worked out some guidelines. And remember, with chat, people who arrive late don't see the chat that went in before they got there. So you have to, in planning that, you have to think about, are you going to re-chat? If you chat a query and somebody shows up after the query, they don't see it. So participation, how do people participate? Again, I'm talking about shared expectations, but I want to know that everybody knows how to participate. So as we've been talking about, are they free to use chat? Let's say so or not. Or are there any further guidelines we want to put on chat? What are our expectations around muting or unmuting? Generally speaking, I try to find some nice words that say, keep your microphone off unless you're intending to speak. But again, in a smaller group, if I'm clerking a committee of 5 or 6 people, often doesn't matter. Often you can leave the microphones on until the dog goes crazy in the background. An important part of participating is, how do you indicate to the clerk that you're ready to speak. If when I'm screen sharing, I can't see as well how all your little thumbnails. I can stretch out my screen to do it, but it's good just to see hands. In fact, as I say that, I realize I don't have that up. In a group where I can see everybody on the screen, I might invite digital hands or physical hands. Just put your hand up someplace where I can see it. When I'm clerking something with more people on the screen than I can see, or even a lot of people, maybe even if I can see them all, but there are a lot, whatever that means to you, I really like digital hands. It shows up in the participant window. It shows up in order. I might say I'm not necessarily going to call on people in the order their hand went up. I'm setting that expectation. I might say, if we had a period where I was asking people to be recognized, I might say speak as led. You know, I might specifically change that expectation. But again, it's all with this eye toward how do people participate. Those are the, okay. And then the other thing to identify is we have a business meeting. It's a programmed meeting for worship, essentially. And are we going to end at an appointed time, or are we going to end when we're complete with our agenda? And just saying that, again, it's around allowing people to participate. Are they going to have to, if they have something else they have to get to, are they going to be able to stay? Do we have to self-moderate as we get close to the time? That's so setting those as part of the meeting. And then this is the last big thing I have, and I think it is the biggest thing I have. How will you ask for approval? And in a word, don't. The problem is, if let's say we've had our report, we've been having some back and forth on it, people have been sharing, giving ministry, and I, as clerk, think we're about ready. I think we're ready for approval. And if I say, do we approve? I will hear a chorus of yeses, usually. What I cannot tell is who held back. I don't have the clues of body language. I can't see who's sitting there all crossed up and I can't see very well. I can't pick up the other clues that we might have in the room, the background noise. None of that is there. That might lead me, if we were in person, to realize I don't even want to ask this question yet. But so online, where we don't have those clues, instead of saying, do we approve, and not knowing who held back, we can, so how do we hear the no? Are there any concerns or hesitations? Is the short version. So let's say I, as clerk, think we might be there. I would say, are there any concerns or hesitations about this matter that we need to hear at this time? And by phrasing it that way, there is all the people who are in favor of it need to keep quiet. And what I'm doing is creating a lot of space for that hesitation. And the bigger that space gets, the bigger that empty space gets, the higher my confidence that we have unity. And so at some point, when that space has grown large enough and nobody has spoken into it, I might say, hearing no concerns, the recording clerk can note that this is approved. That seems to be, you need some way to bring that open space to a conclusion. And so that's a way to do it. So in this silence means approval. We have lots of room for concerns or hesitations. And if I think about the times when I've had that concern, when I've been the one holding that, I'm not even sure how quick I'm ready to say it. It can take me a little while to get there. And that great big empty space, Spirit starts working on me. You know, you got to share that. And so we're making lots of room for it. It gets a little more complicated. Like I gave the example where after the silence, the clerk says, hearing no concerns, the recording clerk can note that this is approved. What if we don't have unity? We've introduced another negative here. So I might have to say something like, I don't believe that we are in unity. And I think, and these are the reasons why. Is there anyone that thinks we are in unity? Or something like that. You know what, I'm inviting something different. I'm inviting somebody to state the opposite of what I said. This is a list of resources. Those are actually links that I have contributed. This is going to be this is going to get shared with you as part of the resource list that comes out after today's event. And so I have shared a longer version of the slides that I just did. I did this workshop in a 2-hour version, and this is the 7-minute version. And so that longer version of slides is what's going to be in the links. And at the end, this very last slide is links to some other things that you might find helpful. So that's what I've got. And so what I want to do now is just invite questions, comments, with a note that what I'm going to do, we're going to have to play a little bit with, is this a new topic or are you responding to the topic at hand? So I think what I'll do is we'll be talking, we'll have a topic, and then at some point I'll say, you know, I'm ready to move on, and are there any other topics, or is your hand up for a new topic, or is your hand up to respond to this one? And so I'm just going to be making that distinction as we go to keep us on tracking. So I can see everybody, so I invite either your physical hand or your digital hand, and questions, comments, new topics. Kat.
Yeah, my question is, when you've got a large group and you bring up a topic for discussion, how do you choose who to call on? We have tried using a color system where if you have a factual question, you hold up one color. If you have an answer to a factual question, you hold up another color. If you have a, you know, like a doubt or a concern or, you know, whatever, you hold up another color. And we've found that to be quite helpful some of the time, but when we have multiple screens, that's hard too. We need multiple people monitoring the multiple screens to tell us there's a red over and, you know, there, and there's a yellow over there. What do you do?
It would depend on the matter. If it's a complex matter where I think we've got all those kinds of questions, I would invite factual questions first, clarifying questions first. I'd invite them. I'm not ready for how you're moved on this matter. I just want to make sure before we move on that everybody understands what we're talking about. So I would divide them temporally like that and invite only those kind of questions. On a matter, I might not know, you know, whether there is a whole mix of those. And it would, for me, I would make my decision depending on the complexity of the matter. So for a complex matter, I might do that, not even knowing if there are clarifying questions, but I might invite those first. And if I get silence, then I might move on to the other. And if it's a matter of being able to answer one, I try to know ahead of time who are those people likely to be. who was on the committee, who, you know, and I would let that guide me. And did that get all of your pieces?
Yeah, pretty much. I would say one thing that I think was especially helpful about the colors was that the none of the above color, yellow, turned out to be the color that meant a lot of people wanted to reframe. And when you have a lot of people who want to reframe the question, you're not ready to address it. And I would say that having the colors in one of those cases kept us out of a deep swamp. I just saw all these yellows. You know what? We'll come back at our next meeting.
And so what you're talking about is asking people to change the color of their hand, their raised hand?
We invited people to bring objects of different colors and hold them up.
Okay.
And it was kind of playful and fun, actually. So, yep.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
So I would say that for an issue where it's a new one that maybe you haven't brought up in a while, or it's bound to be messy, like it's, you know, maybe a big financial thing or something. The colors were super useful in seeing how many people wanted to reframe and get out of it. But I like it's simpler to do what you do, which is just invite questions or just invite responses to those questions. That would work too, I think. Thank you.
What else? Ellen.
Do you share your screen and put up the agenda? And then do you leave it up for the whole meeting, or do you take it down for each people can see your face and feel as though there's more of a connectivity?
I would put it up because it's a support. Not everybody can hear well. People's audio sometimes fuzzes in and out. By putting the agenda up on the screen, you can see it. It gives us a sense of where we are in the meeting. And when we're in person, I like having it up someplace where I can point to where we are. You'd give us a sense of flow. I don't leave it up the whole time. I try it. I would return to it in between items, or as needed. You know, it depends a little bit on how complex it is, but I would use it as a tool to reground us, refocus us, to help with the transition from one item to the next, is to put the agenda up. And as I can't remember if it was in a public space this morning or if it was in my breakout with Peterson's group, where he said, you know, it's really nice to just switch up what you've got on the screen about every 10 to 15 minutes. So if you've just spent 10 minutes on an agenda item, really just putting something up on the screen, even just to change it, has some value.
So then you have to remember to repeat a lot of things that are on the screen that people on the phone can't read.
Right. Yep. So we're accessibility. We're talking, and not everybody's going to be able to see it on the screen. Some people are on tiny little devices. And so yes, everything as much as I can, everything audio and visual. We can't hit it all, but it really helps people. And if somebody's reading a report, I would put that on the screen too. We always do, because again, you don't always catch the audio. The reader's audio might fail, any number of listeners' audio might fail, and some of us just plain don't take in audio information very well. You know, we take it in much better if we can see it. So, and it's another way to keep switching up what people are seeing.
But then you have to read it for the phone people.
Oh yeah, we read it. Oh yeah, I don't even in person. I'm not a big fan of asking everybody to read on their own, because people read at such different speeds, and you don't have the shared experience. So I think it's really helpful to do it out loud. We have a shared experience. We're starting at the same time. We're ending at the same time, and now we're together.
I have a mechanics question too. Can you hear me all right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Carol.
Hi. I learned everything you taught in your workshop, but I got more. the participants list, can you see that when you're sharing the screen, and do you use that to monitor the hands? Because
Yes.
in a big group,
Yes. So
when you share screen?
yeah. If I'm doing something like that, I much prefer the setup that I have, which has two screens, and you can pop out the participants window and move it around. If I can, I can put it over the top of something else, but it gets harder as I get stuff crowded. But you can also, on some systems, you can split your screen. Like Zoom has a split view, so I will usually set it up actually so that the thumbnails of people are taking up about half of my screen, because I need my notes. I want to see the participants. I might need the chat. I got all kinds of other things I want to see too. And what I find is I like to be able to glance at the thumbnails, because I do pick up things there. You know, you can, but if there's more thumbnails than will fit, I'm not getting everybody, but I you know, you get a general idea. Hey, Terry.
I've been a clerk at Red Cedar now for about 10 months, and it's been a lot of experimenting about getting the sense of the meeting and the how to figure out approval. And I first was asking about approval, and then some friends said, well, that feels like voting on Zoom, because you can't have the sense of the meeting very well for all the reasons that you said. So I switched to how do we hear the no or uncertainty, and asking for concerns and hesitations. And we're doing some quite deep work on our anti-racist faith community minute. And we're having some people show up at some meetings and other people show up at other meetings. And some of our decisions have taken months of time. And so then when I asked for either concerns or hesitations, the people who hadn't been to the meetings before bring up the same things that we have already done. So I switched back to having a discussion, and based on what I heard, saying what I thought the sense of the meeting was, and not leaving that gap. And then the last meeting for business, I actually put together about how friends trust the decisions of other friends when they're not part of the community that's made the decision. And that seemed to help. But I found that when I asked for concerns and hesitations, it was really hard to get to the end of something, because it just went on and on. And I wasn't sure how to wrap that up as a clerk with approval.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else on that? Anybody? Let's make this more of a round table. Yeah, Jane.
Well, I would just share my experience of being a member of La Jolla Monthly Meeting and the clerking of our current clerk. And when something like that came up, he would say, it sounds like we do not have unity. We are not close to it. Perhaps we need to have a threshing session for this. And it may, you know, or have a talking meeting for that particular concern. When it sounds like there's enough yellow cards being waved, so to speak, it needs to go back to more discernment, perhaps in a different context.
Yeah, Catherine.
So I don't think this is a problem of online meetings. I think what you're talking about is a problem of any kind of meeting. And what I've seen done is minutes that kind of say, here's where we are right now. They're not really minutes of action or minutes of a decision, but it's a minute of, here's what I have heard, here's the sense of the meeting right now. And then when you go into your next meeting, you can refer back to that earlier minute, so that you're not, so I think for me, the issue is the idea that if it's been a concern that's been really discussed thoroughly, and then you have other people who haven't participated in that discussion, you want a way to kind of bring them to where the meeting has come to on that issue. And a minute of, I don't know what they're called, but here's where we are now kind of minute, I think can be really helpful in that. And then perhaps the clerk can say, friend so-and-so, at our last meeting or 2 meetings ago, we addressed this. Here's the minute that was written at that point. I also really like the idea of focusing on the trust. Like if you were not there to participate in that conversation, then you were not there. Then you trust that spirit was moving, and you trust the clerk's discernment of spirit at that point.
Anybody else on that? Jim, is this your new topic, or are we on this one?
We're on this one here.
Great. Let's hear. Yeah.
We've had this problem ongoing since we've been out of our meeting house, because we've had some vandalism, and over some months decided to hire a service to come around each evening. And there are a couple of people who are very concerned about that. And what I find is that we will decide at, say, February, that we will continue to use the service until, and revisit in April. But that at the next business meeting, the person who agreed to that in February will have forgotten that they've agreed to it. So there's an underlying issue. And in a situation like that, it's very clear. We've minuted that we will revisit that again next business meeting. But I'm a little uncomfortable with sort of open, without putting a time frame when we're going to revisit it again. Because we've also had a situation where, and this was a few years ago, the meeting went through a very difficult time, and where friends knew that there were other people concerned about an issue, and who, for one reason or another, were not there, and used the opportunity to have the meeting make a decision. And it requires the clerk at that point to say, well, we know we have concerns about this. Have the people who are we sure that we are all in unity in the entire community about this? 20 years ago, when we decided to celebrate marriages without regard to gender, we made sure that we did that. And we're very inclusive. But there have been times when we haven't been, and I worry about that. I've seen friends rush forward in something in a very secular way.
So I hear this fundamentally, thank you, Jim. I hear this fundamentally as a question about how do we do decisions that take more than one meeting? And so one of the things I think that is a challenge is just in our world, not everybody's there for every decision. I mean, this is what Terry originally put on the table, or for each bit of progress as we discuss it. So when I think about somebody raising something and me as clerk saying, no, friend, we talked about that, I have just reduced their participation, right? I have just shut them down. And so the way, and it may be true, like what I just said might be completely true, but the way that I would avoid it is at the start of each meeting, having the opening thing be a summary of where we have been. And it includes, these are the concerns we've been hearing. So that everybody is starting the meeting with part of the report or the presentation or whatever it is, part of the start of the meeting includes all the concerns we've been hearing. And so we might add to that list of concerns, but they are there. And then we might say, and then we had, and so we heard this concern and we addressed it in this way. And here's where we are right now on that concern. You know, just a summary. So it requires bringing a new summary each time of where we got to, but it is a way of getting everybody into the room on the same page. Here's where we've been. And it takes some effort to do that. But I think that way we're all starting in the same place. It's the gathering. I think of it as, you know, for me, it's a physical, like I'm gathering people in. And that statement has to be fair. If it's not fair, if it does not adequately represent one of the concerns, then somebody's just sitting on their hand until they have a chance to get it off blow off their steam, you know. But if we can get them all in there, then we've gathered ourselves together.
Thanks.
Yeah, Ellen.
Related to that topic, I know we as clerks sometimes forget to do just what you said to do. Or will forget to give a summary of what they feel the sense of the meeting is. If I'm a participant sitting in that meeting and I see that clerk doing that, is there some little morsel that you could recommend saying that instead of turning to the recording clerk and saying, you know, can you make a minute on this? And they haven't given a sense of the meeting. So they're leaving it up to the recording clerk to give a sense of the meeting. It feels as though you're coming across as a know-it-all to tell them, oh, you should give a sense of the meeting. Do you have any other little things that could be said that would help the process along? I wait until the end of the meeting and I just sort of suggest, you know, if you'd said, this is my sense of what took place in this long conversation that covered, you know, 9 miles. And then she turns to the recording clerk and says, can you record a minute out of all that without taking the time to say, this is where I sense the meeting is, this is what I heard, this is what I think should be recorded as a minute, rather than leaving it up to a recording clerk to do that. Do you have any little morsels we could tuck away to say?
I'm not completely sure I understood. So you're talking about during the meeting.
During the meeting.
During the meeting, we've had a long thing and now we're getting to the end. I will only go as far as I can retain in my head, and I will pause it, because if it gets to where I can't track it anymore, I figure that's probably true for other people too. And so I really will try to summarize as we go along. If I think we're getting to a decision, you know, because another way to conduct the meeting is to just say we're just collecting ideas here. You know, here's the proposal of the whatever committee, and let's just give feedback, and then we're just listing feedback. That's easier to do than to try and summarize where we really are. And
so you list all the feedback in your recording minutes?
Well, it depends on what we're doing. That I want to know, but even before I go into the meeting, what are we doing with this item? Are we supposed to approve something? Are we supposed to consider something for approval, or is this a committee seeking feedback? And those are different how we do it. And if they're seeking feedback, I might not even have to record it all. They need the feedback. You know, they're gonna record it. You know, the recording clerk is saying what transpired in the meeting. You know, we committee asked for feedback. We gave them some feedback, maybe some highlights, but the committee recorded it all. If that's what we're doing with this item. So I want to propose we move on. I don't know if there are other topics out there, but we've spent some time on this one, and we could keep doing that. But if anybody's got, I know Jim, I don't know if we've covered your other topic, or you had your hand up earlier for a topic.
I may have forgotten what it was.
Okay.
No, actually, I did not forget what it was. But it was a technical topic. That is, if I'm sharing a screen, I will always share a window on a screen, and then I can move it all over the place, and I can see all of the faces, and I can see, because I don't need to look at my own slides, but I'll have them up there, and there are some ways to handle it even without having two monitors.
Right.
What I can't be always clear of is that I usually have to set up another computer with coming in as a member of the meeting so that I see what they're seeing. But it seems to have worked.
Yep. If you can do that, yeah. The one reason I favor a full screen presentation is that it cuts out all the toolbars and stuff. When I do just a window, I often get a little more of the, you know.
Yeah, I figured out ways not to do that.
Oh, good. And if you don't do tech, it's really good to think about who's the person that can help you. You know, who's the person that can put it on the screen for you at the moment you need it.
I think that one of my concerns is that I'm both clerk of the meeting and the person who's capable of doing tech. And it's sometimes very hard for me to stay in that clerk spot when I'm also making sure that the reports are visible and so on. But we don't have anyone else.
Anything else? What else is on it? What troubles have you run into trying to clerk online? Yeah, Kat.
Well, what we have been talking about is closely related, but I have definitely run into the problem of not reading people adequately and just getting absolutely clobbered when somebody feels like I've not sufficiently honored their contribution. And I think it's heightened in these circumstances. I think it's just worse. I don't know. I don't know if there's a solution or if it's just being extra careful, but if you have any additional advice on that.
Well, let me ask. Anybody have advice on that?
I noticed your practice of thanking everyone who speaks, and I think that's a good way to start. But then the other thing is that I didn't notice people's hands. I had trouble with the hands and that. And your solution of popping out the participant screen might be helpful. Just noticing people is hard.
Yeah, Melanie.
I feel for Jim if he has to do everything himself, because I personally would find that impossible. In our meeting, we have a monitor and the clerk at all times. And that's really helpful. Not only it's letting people in from the waiting room, but for things like hands, it means you can be much more flexible about how people ask to speak. if another pair of eyes are scanning through the pages of a large meeting, could even say, Jane is unmuted. And then the clerk might say, Jane, did it, if there's another set of eyes looking for responses in the group. And I have found that very helpful and reassuring that I'm not just blanking out through the pressure of trying to manage all these screens.
A lot depends on how second nature the tech part is to you. I mean, I'm guessing for Jim, I mean, and it's true for me, that it comes very easily to me, the tech. But what I notice is in clerking, it exactly Kat's problem is if I have too much of my attention over on the tech, then I don't hear everything that somebody says. But if we have screens, if I'm in a thing where there are screens, plural of people, I'm looking for somebody else to help, even though I can do it. I can totally do it, but I want another person there.
We're facing this tomorrow because we're having a threshing meeting about the things we need to do in order to open up our meeting house for meeting in person. And there are a large number of issues, and there's going to be a hybrid threshing meeting with people on the meeting house porch and people on Zoom. And fortunately, this time I said that I could not clerk that because I have some definite leadings about some of the issues that we need to address. For example, we've been having people visit our meeting from all over the country. And do we no longer have Zoom? Do we have members of the community that we don't serve? So I'm not doing the tech and then passing that off to someone if I am called to speak. There's a specific problem because if we're meeting outside, then there's wind noise and somebody has to turn the microphone on for the person that wants to speak on the porch, and then it becomes impossible. So we've not had the person on the porch clerking the meeting. But it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Catherine.
So I've had the experience clerking a committee where two members of the committee engaged or one in very hurtful behavior towards another member who didn't respond quickly enough to a request for like, can you send out the Zoom link? And I bring it up because I think it speaks to Kat's issue about like, you've missed something, right? I think in this case, what was missed was an appreciation for all the work people are doing behind the scenes. And I think the way through it is to really focus on spending time in community and in getting to know each other better. And so either at the beginning of every meeting, and this is more possible in a committee meeting, I think, than in a large business meeting, but having time to kind of strengthen the bonds between people so that it's like, it gives you a little bit in reserve so that if you make a mistake, there's some like, okay, I know you, I love you. There was one person in our quarterly meeting who I always had trouble with. And we went to a worship sharing together. And then after that worship sharing, I never had trouble with her anymore because we got to know each other in this deep way. And I got to really understand, like, yeah, she can be prickly, you know, and kind of whatever. But I love her because that's what the worship sharing brought us to. So I think that's when I feel like we have to do extra work these days on Zoom to where we are not seeing people in person, to build those bonds and to really intentionally figure out how to build and strengthen the friendship aspect of things.
Perfect. I want to pick up on that because this process, this Quaker decision-making process, is heavily rooted in community. It needs to matter to me that you have a concern. And Zoom is a very formal structure. It works really well for structured things, but what we are completely missing is those casual conversations that happen after worship. They happen in between spaces, and maybe we can get them in breakout rooms, but even that, it's pretty structured. And so we are losing all of that. And so we have to think about how we're going to do that building of community. And that may be that we have to build it into the structure of the business meeting, that we have to build in, like my monthly meeting has started doing queries. Like we do worship sharing around a query. It is an item for business on the agenda. No outcome, it's community building. My meeting has done, there was a Christmas tree ornament exchange where everybody, you know, people that came, they each brought a show and tell ornament and described it and what it meant to them and so forth. That we just had a mending session. Somebody who likes to, you know, she said, you know, I happen to darn socks, but do you fix, is there anything else you do? And we all, everybody got together and shared about mending. It was this casual kind of gathering. And those are those bonds that you're talking about. So we've got probably just a couple of minutes left, but I see your hand, Kat.
Yeah, I guess I want to, I agree with what you just said wholeheartedly. And also I wanted to kind of go back to what Jim said. I recently got especially clobbered in my worship group for some errors of clerking that I made. They were genuine errors. And I realized that I was feeling really, really put upon. Like, why am I the one always doing the apologizing? Why am I always the one feeling like I made the mistakes? And it turned out there was actually a question to that. An answer. It wasn't just a rhetorical question. It was because I had taken on all the responsibilities that involved the potential for conflict and for mistakes. I mean, how bad a mistake you can make when your job is to bring a casserole to somebody, right? So I thought, you know what? This is completely unsustainable. I have actually been the clerk of my worship group since 1998. Nobody's been willing to do it. And I realized, you know, I can't continue to play in that role. And I kind of want to encourage you, Jim, to think about somebody has to learn to take over this tech role. Somebody has to learn to do that piece so that it's not always on you, because that's not a sustainable or reasonable burden, especially now.
I've trained several people to do parts of it. And the problem is that they forget very easily how to do the parts of it. And so that I need to train them again. And that's okay. And I've got one young fellow who is quite good at it at this point, but you want to be very careful with people not to burden them so much. When you've been around as long as I have, okay, fine. And I've also, I became clerk. I'm in my third year. I became clerk after a crisis in the meeting. And I'm very leery. We're not having that crisis again, but I've been very leery of overburdening other people. We have a history in our meeting of overburdening the clerks, and then we never see them again. And that's an unfortunate history. I will say breakout rooms have worked beautifully for us for conversation after meeting, for community building.
We're about to get booted out. And
Yes.
Thank you all. This has been Rich. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for doing it.
Yep.
Thank you, Steve.
I don't know if we're going to get, are we truly going to get booted out? I think so.
They'll give us a minute or something.
Well, we got that minute a little while ago. That's why I'm wondering. But,
Aha, there
yeah.
we go.
So.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Carly. I have to figure out. Oh, I guess we are recording. Great. Okay. I understood I had to do something, and it looks like it just continued on recording from the last time I was in a breakout room. Is that
Are you
is that bougainvillea behind you? Yeah.
virtual bougainvillea? Yes. Yeah, I guess I could make my office. I assume nobody's coming back, but let's see here. There's my boring office in comparison.
The bougainvillea is fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. How many folks did you have in the last session?
There were about a dozen or so. So I'm gonna look and see if people seem to be settling in. Hey, Kathy, we can't hear you.
People are still figuring out how to get to the breakout rooms.
Okay. Looks like, oh, I guess I can't really tell who's not joined. So anyway, we're good. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Steve Mohlke. I use he, him pronouns, and I am from Ithaca Meeting in upstate New York, and that's part of New York Yearly Meeting. And I serve New York Yearly Meeting as General Secretary. So it looks like another person's joining us, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. This is just a welcome. This is something I would commonly do as part of clerking. It's part of gathering people online. And then this slide might be up as people are arriving, but just some basic instructions to, to unmute, use the button, and you can see how to do it. Knowing about chat is important sometimes for our meeting, if it is, to show that button. And then the digital raising of hands is also important. And so actually, I'm going to stop sharing briefly. We're a small enough group. No, never mind. I'm not even going to do that. We're too small a group to bother. Okay, so things I think about. When I'm clerking, how am I going to open the meeting? I want to set some expectations around duration. Are we going to go to the end of the time? Are we going to a set time, or are we going to finish the agenda? That's important for helping people plan. I want to note that when we're online, as anywhere else really, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we need to get it good enough that people and spirit can show up and participate. That's, if I could name my goal in clerking in general, but clerking online, can we be clear enough that that people and spirit can show up? Can we keep the distraction to a minimum? One of the let me back up a moment. The format, I think you've heard it, but the format is of this is I'm going to do this little presentation at the beginning, and then this is really fundamentally a roundtable. So we just get to talk out whatever issues you might have brought in with you, or whatever issues, whatever things get inspired by what I present. So, so the first question one of the questions I have is, how will you handle Zoom chat? You know, is chat open? Chat, it can be good for sharing specific things like an email address or sharing queries that were prompts. If there's a relevant document, particularly if somebody refers to something, it's easy to throw that into the chat. The problems with chat are it becomes a venue for side conversations. I have been part of meetings where there's as much going on in the chat as there is in essentially the main event. And so in thinking about clerking in general, I really want us to be having a shared experience. And so when there's a side conversation, you've now divided the group. You know, there's people that are paying attention there and people that are paying attention to the main screen. And by the way, how do you clerk chat and the main event at the same time? It's if there's very much going on in chat, it's hard to do. If there's a tiny little bit, maybe. And so and phone participants can't join in the chat. So you've already left some people behind if you allow anything in the chat. So I prefer to think of it as supporting the meeting, but not central to it. And if you don't clarify what the guidelines are, people will make up their own rules and they'll do whatever they want. Yeah, Carly.
Just a quick question. Can you review what's technically possible related to chat?
Sure, yes. So the options, Zoom has 4 options. One is off, no chat at all. The other one is everyone, publicly and privately. Those are the 2 extremes. So everyone, that's wide open. And individuals can chat with each other. Individuals can chat to the whole group. And then the middle option, I said 4. Hold on. The middle option is let's see, is host only, and it looks like I don't get to control that here in the breakout room. But host only, if you've got if you or a tech person can be monitoring the chat, then host only is a good way for people to ask offline questions or to say that isn't big enough on the screen, or, you know, like background technical kind of things. Or maybe you want to build it into the program and invite people to say things in chat to the clerk. Or in our yearly meeting sessions, we name a person on chat support. One of the tech people is on chat support, and we say, direct your chat messages to that person. And the clerk is not paying attention to it. You can chat to the clerk, it's technically possible, but the clerk's not paying attention. So if you want a response, here's what to do. And so we'll build all that in. My monthly meeting, chat is just off during meeting for business. But it's just helpful to think about it and then to let everybody know. That's the important thing. We want to have a shared experience and shared expectations. And that really becomes the question of, how do people participate? So there are people who have had lots of experience with Quaker meeting, but not so much experience online. There are people who have had lots of experience online, not so much with Quaker meeting. And so we're trying to gather all of them into a unified experience. And so we want to do things like establish the guidelines around chat. We want to say something about muting and unmuting microphones. I find in a group of 6 people, it doesn't make a lot of difference if people mute their microphones or not. We usually don't have a problem. And when we do, when somebody's dog starts in, that person mutes and it's fine. But in a larger group, there can be so many of those little things that it's just, I'll ask people, please keep your microphone off unless you're ready to speak. How should participants indicate that they are ready to speak? It's like, is it speak as led, or do they need to be recognized by the clerk? If they need to be recognized by the clerk, how do they do that? And I find in a group of larger than about a dozen to 15, somewhere in there, somewhere between 12 and 20 is my threshold for when I need people to use digital hands, because I can't keep track. It gets to be hard to keep track of the physical hands after that, but you can pay attention to where your own limit is. But I'm a big fan of digital hands. Zoom lets us, it keeps track who got their hand up first. In our last session, somebody shared that they were using colors, that you could hold up something of a certain color to indicate the kind of question you had. Did you have a clarifying question? Did you have a factual question? Did you? But I didn't entirely follow it, but they were finding that useful. And just to let people know, also participants wise and creating shared expectations. Will we end at a certain time, or will we end when we finish the agenda? And in our case, we're ending at a certain time. We're ending at 1/4 of the hour. And this is the last point I'll present. How will you ask for approval? And in a word, don't. And here's the problem. Here's why I say that. If we've been having a discussion on a matter and people have been sharing, and as clerk, I think that we are about there, and I want to ask, do we approve? I want to share a sense of meeting, maybe, do we approve? What I will get back is a chorus of yeses. What I will not necessarily hear is that quiet no, and I certainly will not notice somebody who held back. And I may not pick up their body language, that they're sitting there with their arms crossed and their legs crossed and like everything is all closed up and they are not there, that I might pick up in person. So so asking, do I approve, does not help me pick up who might not really be there. How do we hear that uncertainty? And so the alternative is to say, are there any concerns or hesitations that need to be heard at this time? I've essentially reversed the question. And by asking it in that way, I am asking all the people who approve to keep quiet. And I'm making a larger and larger space for that concern to be raised. And if you think about the times that you've had that you've been the person holding that concern, it can be awfully hard to speak into the group. And so by creating this space, you are letting spirit work on them. You are letting spirit work on the person who holds that concern to have the opportunity to speak up. And so silence means approval, lots of room, and so let me back up for a second. So you've had a silence now. That silence, the length that you need to wait probably depends on the weight of the matter. If it's a matter where people are going to have a hard time speaking against the group, I would wait longer. I say against the group, speaking something that the group doesn't want to hear, speaking something that is contrary, I probably need to wait longer. If it's a fairly pro forma matter, I might just leave a fairly perfunctory silence. But then after whatever that silence is has passed, I might then close it by saying, hearing no concerns, let the recording clerk note that this is approved. That helps define a moment where it's closed. And some people like to do their thumbs up at this point, or their, their reactions, or their whatever. I mean, that can be the, sometimes there's that energy that needs to come out. And so that's a time for it. If there's not approval, if we are like, if we don't have unity, I might say, I don't believe we have unity on the matter. We have concerns about this and about this. And so I think we do not have unity. But if anybody thinks we do have unity, I'd like to leave room for them to speak up. So I'm leaving room for the thing that's opposite what I said. I'm essentially making an assumption that people are with me, but making space for there not to be. And that I think leaves that space. And then the last thing I'll just say is this is a short version of a longer presentation that I gave about clerking by Zoom. These slides are picked, I cherry picked them from that presentation, and that presentation, a link to that presentation will be given as part of the notes when today is over. The FGC has offered that, but that approval thing came from a Friends Journal article by Stan Becker called "Reconsidering I Approve," and so a more detailed explanation, and he explains where that comes from in Quaker history, and I found that to be an incredibly useful article. So that's what I've got. There is, as we move into the roundtable part of this, I want to suggest that we use that we have both digital hands and physical hands. There are few enough of us that I can track I can see all of our physical hands. So if you have but what I can't tell when your hand is up is whether you have a new topic or a response to the topic we're currently talking about. And so what I want to suggest is that let's use digital hands if you have a new topic. And if you want to respond to what we're talking about, let's use our physical hands, or we're only 6 people. We can also kind of just speak up if that's more comfortable. So questions, comments, topics. Tom.
You talked about a little bit about this in the section about the reconsidering I approve. It seems like online meetings are easy to get done if the work is not so tough to work on together, but hard on very controversial topics. And I'm wondering whether you have any accumulated experience about beyond how to handle I approve or giving a sense of the meeting, whether you have any experience and wisdom about how best to deal with difficult topics online.
Sure. So I'm gonna define that as so there's topics that are complex enough that we can't do them in one meeting, and then there's complex topics that maybe we can get done in one meeting. I try to get I work hard as a clerk to get everything in the presentation, and I make sure that we're showing the presentation. It might be then, if I think there's some complexity to it, I might ask for clarifying questions first. I'm not looking for what your discernment is on a matter yet. I just want some clarifying questions. I might divide it that way. I might ask for factual information questions first, not even just clarifying information, and then I might get into, okay, well, how do how do we, what are some responses to this? I might divide it up a little bit, like not just, what I'm saying is not just make a free for all. I might organize what kinds of questions or what kinds of responses I'm looking for. Another thing that I might do is if I've had several responses in a row, all in the same direction, say in favor, I might pause that and say, I'm getting a sense that there are people in favor of this. Are there any concerns that haven't been raised? Are there any, like, I would just create a pause and ask, is there something else? Rather than take up more time right at this moment with more people in favor or more people the same. You could also use breakout rooms. I mean, they're easy enough if there's a decent number of people, if there's, like if everybody really needs to talk and there's more, and the number of people and the time available wouldn't really allow for that, I would think about breakout rooms. And then I would think about, at the end of breakout rooms, asking people to identify what are the things that came up in your breakout room that really need to be shared with the whole group. And that does two things. It lets you get permission from somebody else if you wanted to share a thing that they did, or to encourage them. It's a way of sifting what took place in the breakout room, and that can be helpful to the whole group to get the benefit of that sifting. And we've had a chance for everybody in a smaller, maybe safer space to say something. Anybody else on and then I would say on ones where it's longer than one business meeting, like you made some progress on one, but you're not there yet, and now we're in a new business meeting, different people, maybe a little. I would try to have a document that summarizes where we've been and how we got here, and includes any concerns that are raised. And so that we're all starting from the same place. We don't have to slap anybody because they weren't part of the history. We've brought them up to speed for being here today. Anybody else on that? Any on complex matters? Did that give you enough to try something? Anybody else? Other topics? Yeah, Carly.
I think about so many of these wonderful tools that for those of us who choose or can participate visually and audially. And I think about how do we include friends who are on via telephone, are not able to get online, or get emails even to see those follow-up documents. Just trying to just there's so much to think about in terms of inclusivity. Even like you said, the people who interacted real time on a particular discussion, and the people who had to catch it asynchronously. It's really like I'm a digital learning coach. I'm a teacher with a master's in education and technology, but this is a real challenge and then you've got age and so on and so forth, location and time zone. That's what I'm wrestling with.
Anybody else? Anybody want to share on that? How do you include everybody? Yeah, Jeff.
Slightly different. I wanted to share that Zoom has helped us quite a bit, get information out, reports before business meeting, sharing the agenda. And I've established a a minute document on Google Docs, which is the agenda, and everyone can watch the recording clerk take the agenda and turn it into a minute. So there isn't any ambiguity about what the minute is. It's done contemporaneously. And when we're done with a meeting, there's nothing left to do. It's just great to have this visible on the screen, and it sure beats printing out copies of reports and sub-reports and agenda. It's so simple using our Google Docs.
So Jeff, is that shared on the screen while you're doing that? Is the recording, or do people have to have that on a different part of their screen than the Zoom window?
We share it periodically. When we're reviewing the minutes or approving the minutes, of course, we show it. When we're switching agenda topics, we flash the agenda. But when we're doing discernment, we do want to see each other on the screen and not be distracted with the words.
I have imagined that. The recording clerks that I've known are too shy to do that. That's, it takes some confidence or something. I don't know what it takes, but that's great. I think that's where we're headed as we get more comfortable with that.
My style as clerk is to have a fairly detailed agenda. It's not just a list of topics, but a paragraph on each topic. And the recording clerk doesn't need to do much unless there's some significant discussion. So they're really rewording an agenda statement. And maybe you might think of it as a mini report, but it's all one long document. So the pushback I've had is that some of the recording clerks think that, I've really pulled the rug out from underneath them. There's really not much contribution they have to make. But in a Zoom setting, I'm not sitting next to the recording clerk, and there isn't the elbow to elbow consultation that goes on. So this really has shifted into a better agenda preparation and a more minimalist recording.
Could I ask just a couple of quick questions, Jeff? You said that it's the recording clerk who has the minuted or the minutes ready, and you said something about sharing it via a Google Doc during the Zoom meeting?
Yeah. As the clerk, I decide what I share and when, and the recording clerk is aware that I'm going to be showing where they may be editing right at the very moment. If they're working on a past topic, trying to clarify something, that may be scrolled off the top of the screen as we work on the next agenda item, and then I can pull it back down when I know the recording clerk is done refining the minute as we finally approve it. But everybody can see the minute as written as they're hearing it read. So the recording clerk is sort of being eavesdropped on as they work, as my agenda is turning into a minute from top to bottom.
Two questions, or actually one statement. In Santa Fe, our clerk of the meeting actually has each of the committee clerks come prepared so that if there are action items to be minuted, the minute is produced by that clerk and is provided to the clerk and recording clerk for review before the meeting for business begins. So it's, really sounds so consistent with what you're talking about. The second thing I would just ask is,
I think it's important not.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeff. I think we're just getting a little delay.
It's important for the clerk not to have any surprises in business meeting. So I ask that the clerks put their own agenda items into this master agenda, so everyone has the ability to edit this document. I don't create the agenda. I may clean it up, but they're instructed to put items in there announcing this or proposing that or something to be received. So we all know what is likely to require some discussion and discernment. So they're responsible for creating the corporate agenda and bringing no surprises at time of the meeting. And if there are reports to be shared, I make sure they're provided as Google Docs and they're hyperlinked into the agenda. So on Saturday, before our meeting for business Sunday, I send a dedicated email out to our distribution list. And in the body is that agenda with all these hyperlinks. So everyone is prepared. And some say this might discourage attendance, but I think it encourages attendance because people know what's going to be talked about and they can come best prepared.
The other quick question that I have is what kind of a learning and training curve was there for the two of you and or for the rest of the committee clerks in learning how to use Google together?
I think very little. Google Docs is a dumbed down Word, Microsoft Word in my mind. You have to get familiar with it, but if you can type, you can edit a Google Doc. And for the less experienced backup recording clerks, I just provide them a link and I say, open this, start typing, editing. Of course, Google Docs also provides editing history, so you can find out exactly who did what when. It's fantastic.
I'm sorry to keep it hugging, but each answer gives me another question. In Santa Fe, one of the other things that we did in addition to building our agendas using Google Docs is that we built a digital archive of our meeting for business agendas and minutes. And especially in this time of pandemic, it's proved, so much more useful than having hard copies in the meeting house library. Has anyone done something like that?
Yep. And you can embed, if you've got a website and you want that on your website, you can embed a Google folder onto your website and let people rummage around in, what might be some nested folder structure.
Yes, I went back and scanned all of our records back to 1939 using a OCR scanner. So you can do a search for the text within any of these documents that are now PDFs. So it's made it possible to do things that were impossible when we stare at a shelf of 3-ring binders. And today, each of our business meetings is represented by a folder with the date. And within the folder, there'll be a particular minute document, and then other reports like treasurer's report or annual reports will also be there. So the minute is really a folder of documents with one principal record.
What type of scanner and how long did it take? And then I'll hush up.
Brother makes this scanner that's smaller than a loaf of bread. It's portable, doesn't need its own power source. It's UBS driven. Comes with OCR built in, does great for photographs. Does two-sided document scanning, throws out blank back pages. It was like $150 on Amazon. Quite worth it. It's about 4 by 4 by 14 inches.
Okay. Any other questions on that? We need a new topic. Yeah, Kathy.
Yeah, that's the first time I've ever done hand raising.
All right. Congratulations.
New at this game. One problem that we have at business meeting for worship or business is if somebody's sharing a document, then we can only see over on the side half of the people who are in the meeting. So if somebody has their hand up either electronically or physically, you can't always see it. So we have a tradition of people will say, "Clerk, please," and that you can hear even if the person is off the screen.
You can, if you open the participants window, the raised hands show there and they bubble to the top. So you can actually, I mean, in a meeting, I mean, our yearly meeting business sessions are 100 people or more, and you know, those hands just bubble to the top, and it makes it easy to tell who's there. But you have to open the participants window. But
I will tell people to do that. I'm the owner of our Zoom account, and so I keep coaching people on how to do this better. Thanks.
Steve, is that a new Zoom feature? Because a year ago, that did not happen.
we might be talking about different things, because we did that last summer, well, a year ago. I don't remember. Going into last summer's sessions is when I got the most familiar with Zoom. But if you open your participants window right now, I think you can see it. Like, if
Yeah, I just did that.
you know, I mean,
I do, but I never experienced the keeping the order.
Yep. People with their hands up, and
how do you have it sort those that raised hands first to the top?
Zoom does it.
So if you open participants now, you see I've got my hand raised.
So somebody else raise a hand.
Let's see.
Yeah, so Kathy's was up. Okay, so Kathy's was up first, and then Tom.
Dot next to your name, Steve. What does that mean?
The red dot means we're recording.
Gotcha.
And that would show up when we get back to the main session. You'll notice all of the co-hosts have that. It'll show under any host or co-host, but
as clerk, you don't necessarily want to be calling on whoever raised their hand first.
No, and I'll say
who
that
you think will help to advance the conversation.
Yes, but I'll be explicit about that. I will see your hands. I will not necessarily call on you in the order that the hands were raised. Yeah, I definitely favor people who have not spoken. Hands down. That's so to speak. That's an easy choice. But also what you say. Who you know. Do I have a sense of whose voice needs to be heard now?
I tend to say that up front, that I'm likely to only call on people at most once per topic, and that way people tend to discern more before they share their thoughts rather than just popping off whatever's the top there.
Right.
Less blithering.
And I will also, if I didn't think to say that in advance, I can always say, I'm looking now for people we haven't heard from. We're looking for people we haven't heard from on this matter. Just to kind of raise that bar a little bit. We've got about 10 minutes.
Goodness, all this technology stuff.
Carly.
Well, while we're sharing tips and tricks of clerking, and I'm so glad to hear that there are others, friends in other meetings who use the power of Google's collaborative tools. do you, I'm wondering for any friends, but obviously Jeff, because you speak in my language, do you use Google Workspaces for nonprofits?
Unfortunately, no, because we're part of New York Yearly Meeting, and Google only provides a free subscription to the holder of the nonprofit 501c3, and that entity is New York Yearly Meeting. We would, if we were to incorporate ourselves, we would be able to receive that. But right now, I'm just dealing with the non-integrated suite of Google tools. We do use Google Groups for both distribution lists and controlling access to the Google Drive. So I find that not having Google Suite formally hasn't been a big drawback. It would be nice to have the nice website domain name in all of these Google objects, but that's been the only drawback. And the fact that we have a Clerk Gmail account that all this is tied to. So that's going to have to move to whoever is the new clerk. And it'd be best to have the administrative collection of things separate from the clerk.
And G Suite would allow that. I mean, G Suite does allow for shared drives in particular that are owned by the organization, not any individual account in the organization. But we're off on now we're off on tech, and I wanted there's a lot of places we could go, but I want to just make sure we're good on anything about online clerking here.
I'm expecting a contentious meeting for business tomorrow. We've got a change in the guidelines that last month, we're seasoning a change in the guidelines, and there was a lot of controversy last month. So you know it's been brewing. How do you deal with controversy in a meeting for business?
First, I welcome it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we need different views on matters, and just say this is normal. And the reason I do that is because some people you'll start to lose them. They'll start to be just the existence of controversy. Some people will start to lose touch with spirit, just because it's happening. So I just want to welcome it and say it's normal. And then I will, if I have some sense of what it is, I will start with the hardest stuff first. Just why not? Why use up our best energy on trying to solve a matter that's simple, that might be simple, you know? So if I can identify that, like and I would try to name what the controversy is before starting, if I possibly could. We have been talking about this, and we've heard these concerns. I'd rather have that in writing as something to present as part of the opening for it, and not even have to come out of my mouth as clerk. You know, I'd rather that was part of the presentation. But but it's also possible for the clerk to just say, here's where we are, and we have some concerns, and we're going to take those concerns one at a time. So a little bit like I've been facilitating this meeting. Do you need to respond to the concern we're talking about, or do you have a new one? And so I want to give some airtime to the concern, maybe not finish it, but I want to give a concern a shot before, and then at some point I might reach a point where I'm ready to move on to a new concern. Is there anything else that needs to be shared on this one, knowing that we are not complete if we're not? I just keep trying to name where we are. The other thing that happens is people sometimes say things in ways that others can't hear them. And so just trying to say back what just got said can be really helpful, both in slowing it down and making sure you got it right. You know, can I just say back what I think I heard you say, and then ask, you know, did I get that right? And I would try, the other thing I would try to do if we're ending not in unity is to identify why. Here, we're not in unity yet, and here is our sticking point or our sticking points. And try to, if I could get those into the minutes, even better. And then I would invite everybody to pray on it between now and next time we meet. Here's where we are. Here's where we have this value and that value that are right at this moment in conflict with each other. And just because because what I believe is that Spirit will work on us in the meantime, and that if we all have it, but if we all gave up dejected, we didn't get unity, we're mad at each other, it's harder. It's just harder to be constructive about it. But if we know this, it's right here, it's right, you know, that's the spot. It's helpful.
But how is it easier or harder with online clerking? Are there more difficulties to overcome?
I think you have to slow down more. I mean, it's helpful to slow down anyway in difficult issues, but I think online you have to slow down even more. It grounds us, and I would really make sure everybody's waiting to be recognized by the clerk. Crucial, because if people start going and the clerk has lost control of that, you just got to insert yourself back in there and get control and get people. So I would start the meeting, you know, making sure people wait to be recognized, and then you can control the pace. You can slow it down when you need to, and I would just slow it down. And if you have to stop and make notes, I would use that as an opportunity for the meeting to slow down. Yeah, so I think that's the main difference, I think, in online, is that it's like we were having this, even in this call right here, a little bit of delay, you know, and so you want to make sure to just let that delay play out.
I think threshing sessions are also really helpful, where a group's not trying to make any decision. You're just trying to hear in some format, worship sharing or whatever, an open presentation with people's comments, how people feel about an issue, with no expectation that you're going to make any decision. And that can be helpful, at least identifying some of the core concerns or issues.
Yeah. If you see it coming and it's complex, I wholeheartedly endorse that. So we've got about 15 seconds left. We're going to be back in the main room. So I want to thank you all. I love having these conversations, and thank you for joining.
Thank you.